Today's skeleton demo is going to be the use of spirals in FI. How can we think of a spiraling motion to help us do our work with more precision and make it a little easier to do? If I just lengthen the leg, I can see that I'm getting some movement up toward the hip and the pelvis, but it's not really going through as much as it could. If I add a spiraling movement to the lengthening of the leg, now you can see and by spiraling, as I lengthen, I'm just doing a little bit of a twist. And now you can see that movement going all the way up to the head. So this little spiraling movement helps you be able to connect through the skeleton throughout the whole person. I could even think of doing the spiraling through different parts of the foot. And I have one hand on the inside of the ankle, one hand on the outside of the ankle. And now I'm thinking of creating that little downward spiral, that lengthening and spiraling from the ankles. And you can see we're getting a little movement of the fibula and the tibia. If these two areas feel like they're kind of stuck together, you may have to differentiate them a little bit. You can kind of hold them in place and make little circles. Sometimes that helps to differentiate. And then as I do this spiraling movement, if I pay attention to the coming back, I can go into a little compressing movement and get a little compression there. I can move to the heel, and I could even think of this little spiraling motion. So right now I have the heel and I'm just under the ankle joint, and I can create this little spiraling motion here. The downward spiral. As I have a feel of that, then I could even compress into the heel. To create that upward spiral. Another good place on the foot is the cuboid. And if you find the heel and just go a little bit toward the toes from the heel, right there is the cuboid. And you can kind of contact the cuboid with the rest of the foot, and again we can create this downward spiraling motion. Or I can compress into the cuboid through the leg, into the pelvis, into the spine, toward the head. Other places where we can think about the spiraling is right here, the metatarsal heads. Particularly important are the fourth, the fifth metatarsals here. We can spiral from the metatarsal heads and then think about compressing, creating that upward spiral as we compress. You can do that to all the metatarsals of the toe. And then of course sometimes it's nice to get the toes Just create a little spiraling motion from the toes. You can spiral outwardly, spiral inwardly. So this is a nice way of using the concept of the spirals with the legs and the feet. Now toward the end of the FI, you take each leg, and it may be easier to do without the roller. You can see which way's easier, but we can think of using a spiraling motion with both legs. And you can see as we create this spiraling movement and lengthening of the leg, and as we bring it back, you can see that we can get a spiraling movement going through the whole skeleton. Let's look at some upper body things. Spiraling also works really well with the arms. The Errol Flynn lesson, the one where you extend and turn the arms out, is a spiraling movement, and that's a nice thing to do FI-wise. So we can think about having the arm, and you can see if we get the spiraling movement of the arm, and if we can get the shoulder blade and work with that. He's missing some rotator cuff, so I'm just going to help the shoulder joint out a little bit. But you can see how this can start to connect to the head a little bit. And you can see that the movement of the arm is connecting to the shoulder blade and the clavicle, into the rib cage and the spine. And as we create this little spiraling movement, we're getting it to movement to connect all the way into the head. And as you can see, there's the opportunity to also work with the spiraling movement through the forearm, the wrist, into the palm and the fingers. Kind of similar to what we did with the feet, so that's also possible. We can even think of doing the spiraling movement from C7. And we go down the cervical vertebrae. It's kind of hard to see with him on his back. But the 7th cervical vertebrae is the one that sticks out. It's kind of in the area, if you were taking a shower, it would hit that part of your back. And the movement is kind of a spiraling like this as you press a little into it. And if you're working with a smaller person, you may have your fingers like this and kind of create the spiraling like that. Now I'm gonna look for C7. Got it right around here. And I'm just thinking of that little spiraling movement down. Coming back. And my two fingers are spiraling inward. And if that goes well, then you can play around with the idea of maybe spiraling and maybe creating a slight turn in one direction or the other direction. Similar to what you did with the legs. I don't know if it's going to work on this guy. He doesn't have much in the way of rotator cuff. But if you can get the shoulder blades and then creating this spiraling movement with the arms, you can do something very similar to what we did before with the legs, creating that spiraling movement. Well, it's like we just dislocated his shoulder. So hopefully this will give everybody a few ideas of how you can use this idea and concept of spiraling in an FI. Take care. Hope to see you again, either at our studio or online.